I finished building the cabin 3 years before the world ended. That's what I keep telling myself when the guilt creeps in during the quiet hours. That I couldn't have known. That the timing was just coincidence. That I'm not some prophet who saw the collapse coming and saved only himself. But the truth sits heavier than that. Some part of me always knew civilization was fragile, built on assumptions that could shatter with one good push. So I built this place 2,000 feet up a sheer rock face in the San Rafael swell, accessible only by a path I carved myself, defensible by geography alone, invisible from below unless you knew exactly where to look. The armored vehicles, those I built for different reasons. Started with the first one 7 years back. A 1987 Chevy K30 that I stripped down to the frame and rebuilt with 1/4-inch steel plating, run flat inserts in the tires, reinforced suspension that could handle the extra weight. Gun ports I told myself were just for fun, just a project, just because I could. Then came the second one, the big international harvester that I turned into something between a truck and a tank, with a sleeping compartment behind the cab and storage that could hold 3 months of supplies if I packed it right. People at the shop where I worked thought I was paranoid. My ex-wife, Talitha, thought I was having a breakdown after the divorce. My brother Kenzo said I was wasting money on Mad Max cosplay. Now Kenzo is dead. Talitha is probably dead. And those people from the shop are definitely dead, because I drove past it on day 2 of the outbreak and saw them stumbling around in the parking lot with that distinctive jerking walk, that wrongness in how they moved. I'm alive because I was paranoid. I'm alive because I built things nobody thought I'd need. I'm alive because when the emergency broadcast said to shelter in place, I did the exact opposite. I loaded up both vehicles in under 4 hours and drove through the night while the roads were still mostly clear. While people were still listening to authorities who had no idea what was coming. While the infection was still something happening in other cities, other states, something that surely the government would handle. The drive from Salt Lake City to the swell took 6 hours instead of the usual 3.5. Roads were clogged even then. People fleeing without plans, without destinations, just moving, because staying still felt like death. I used the shoulder, used medians, used the weight and armor of the International to push through when I had to. Hit 3 infected on the highway outside Price. Didn't even realize they were infected at first, thought they were just people stumbling in the road, until they didn't move when I honked, until their faces turned toward my headlights, and I saw the way their jaws hung loose, the way their eyes reflected the light like animals. The impact barely registered in the cab. That's what half a ton of steel plating does. But I felt it in my chest anyway. Felt it in my hands on the wheel. Felt it in the knowledge that I'd just killed 3 people. Except they weren't people anymore. Except maybe they were. These are the thoughts that come during the quiet hours, 2,000 feet above the desert floor, looking out at a world that stopped making sense. The final approach to the cabin is what saves me every day. The path up the cliff face is barely wide enough for 1 vehicle, carved into the rock over 2 summer seasons of dangerous work, with climbing gear and rock chisels and small charges where I absolutely needed them. I told the BLM Rangers I was documenting petroglyphs. I told the climbing community I'd found a new route. I told everyone enough truth mixed with lies that nobody questioned why I spent so many weekends alone in the desert with industrial equipment. The path switchbacks 11 times, each turn tighter than any normal vehicle could handle, each section with a grade that would defeat standard trucks. But my vehicles aren't standard. I built them for this. I tested them on this route a dozen times, learned every inch, every angle, every spot where the wheels would slip on loose stone if you hit it wrong. The path ends at a narrow shelf of rock about 30 feet wide and 60 feet long. tucked into an alcove in the cliff face, invisible from above and below, accessible only if you knew it existed. The cabin itself is small, 12 feet by 20 feet, built from local timber and stone, the roof covered in desert camouflage netting that I can roll back on clear days to let light through the skylights. Solar panels are hidden on a shelf above, connected by cables I ran up the rock face. Water comes from a spring that seeps from a crack in the stone, enough to fill a 20-gallon tank every 3 days if I'm careful. I built the whole structure to be sustainable, off-grid, invisible. A place to escape to when life got too much, when I needed silence, when the world felt too crowded and too connected and too fast. Now it's the only place left. Maybe not the only place anywhere. Somewhere there must be other survivors, other people who got lucky or prepared, or just happened to be in the right place when everything fell apart. But from up here, scanning the desert with binoculars every morning and evening, I haven't seen any sign of living humans in 43 days. That's how long it's been since I arrived. 43 days of silence, except for the wind, except for my own breathing, except for the occasional sounds that drift up from below. Sounds I've learned to identify, sounds that tell me what's moving in the dead world beneath my perch. The infected don't climb. That's the first thing I learned, the most important thing. I watched a group of them try to follow my tire tracks to the base of the cliff path on day 4. There were maybe 20 of them, drawn by some remnant of curiosity or hunting instinct, or who knows what still flickers in their ruined brains. They gathered at the bottom where the path begins, and I watched through the binoculars as they tried to understand the concept of climbing. A few made it up the first 10 feet, hands slapping at rock, feet scraping, but without coordination. Without the ability to plan movements, they just fell back down. After an hour, they gave up, wandered off in different directions, forgot I existed. I stayed on the platform with my rifle for 6 hours after that, safety off, watching the path, making sure none of them got smart, got lucky, got up here. None did. None have since. The infected are trapped by their own deterioration. Whatever the virus does to the brain, it destroys the parts that handle complex movement, spatial reasoning, planning. They can walk, can run in a stumbling way, can grab and bite and tear. But they can't climb a rock face. They can't navigate a narrow path with switchbacks and drop-offs. They can't reach me. This is what I tell myself. This is how I sleep at night. The cabin interior is organized to the inch because space is precious. The west wall has shelving for food supplies, canned goods, rice, beans, flour, sugar, salt, coffee, all the things I stockpiled over the years, while Talitha rolled her eyes and Kenzo made jokes about my doomsday basement. I brought up enough to last 8 months if I'm careful, longer if I ration hard. The north wall has tools, hand tools mostly, because power tools are useless now except for the battery-powered ones I can charge from the solar panels. I've got saws, hammers, chisels, files, a bow drill for making fire, fishing line, hooks, snares, everything I might need to survive long-term if the supplies run out. The east wall is water storage and filtration. The spring water looks clean, but I filter it anyway through a system I built from ceramic elements and activated carbon. Can't be too careful. The virus spreads through bites and fluid contact. Everyone knows that. But what if it's in the water too? What if it's airborne in ways they didn't announce before the broadcast stopped? These are the questions that keep me checking and rechecking my systems, that keep me wearing a respirator when I'm outside, that keep me alive through paranoia. The south wall is sleeping and medical supplies. A narrow cot with good blankets because desert nights get cold even in September. A medical kit with antibiotics, painkillers, bandages, sutures, field surgery equipment I learned to use from YouTube videos that no longer exist because YouTube no longer exists. Next to the medical kit is my gun safe. 2 rifles, a shotgun, 3 pistols, enough ammunition to fight a small war or to make very sure I never get taken alive if it comes to that. I don't think about that option much, but it's there. The first week was the hardest, not because of supply issues or close calls or danger. The cabin was safe, the supplies were adequate. The infected were far below. The hardest part was the silence. I'd spent years building this place, imagining it as a retreat, a sanctuary, but always with the assumption I could leave whenever I wanted. Could drive back to the city, to restaurants and movie theaters, and the climbing gym where I spent Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Could call Kenzo and meet for beers, even though we'd just argue about politics and whose fault the divorce was. Could go to the grocery store and buy fresh vegetables and meat and bread, without thinking about whether I had enough, whether it would last, whether there would ever be more. That first week, I kept reaching for my phone to check messages before remembering there were no more messages. The cell towers went dark on day 6. My internet lasted a bit longer in some places, but my satellite uplink died on day 9, cut off from whatever server or power grid or technician it needed to function. After that, I was truly alone. No news, no updates, no way to know what was happening anywhere else in the world. Just the shortwave radio. And for the first 2 weeks, I listened obsessively, scanning frequencies, hoping for broadcasts, for government channels, for military coordination, for some indication that someone somewhere was organizing a response. Found a few voices. Heard a man in Grand Junction describing a refugee center at the community college that was accepting survivors. That was day 11. By day 13, I heard screaming on that same frequency, then nothing. Heard a woman broadcasting from Moab, calm and professional, reading safety instructions and coordinates for supply drops. That lasted 4 days before her voice changed, got shaky, got desperate, said things about the doors not holding, and please, if anyone could hear this, to tell her daughter in Seattle that she loved her. Then static. Now the radio gives me nothing but empty channels and occasional bursts of noise that might be automated systems still running somewhere, might be solar flares, might be the screaming of dead satellites. I still listen for an hour every evening because what else am I going to do? Because hope is hard to kill even when you've seen what I've seen. During the day, I maintain routines because routines keep you sane. Wake up at dawn. The skylights ensure I can't sleep past sunrise even if I wanted to. Drink the water, eat a small breakfast, usually oatmeal with dried fruit because I need to save the better food for morale on the hard days. Check the solar panels. Make sure the connections are tight, that the charge controllers are working, that the batteries are healthy. Check the water collection. Refill the storage tanks if they're low. Check the vehicles. Yes, both of them, even though I haven't driven anywhere in 43 days. Because keeping them maintained means keeping my options open. The Chevy is my scout vehicle, lighter, faster, better fuel economy. The International is my fortress on wheels, my escape plan if this place gets compromised, my mobile home with enough storage to start over somewhere else if I have to. Both have full tanks. Both have spare fuel in jerry cans strapped to the roof racks. Both are ready to go in 15 minutes if I need them. After vehicle maintenance comes the perimeter check. I walk the platform, examine every inch of the path I can see from above, look for signs of disturbance, for rock falls that might block my exit route, for anything that's changed. Then I climb up to the solar panel ledge. 30 feet of class 5.7 climbing, easy for me, impossible for the infected. and scan the desert below with binoculars. I've got 8 different vantage points from up there, each giving me a view of different sections of the surrounding area. I spend 2 hours some mornings just watching, documenting, trying to understand the patterns. The infected move during the day and night both, no circadian rhythm left in them. They cluster sometimes, drawn together by sounds or movement or whatever broken instinct still fires in their heads. I've seen groups as large as 50, shambling through the desert in loose packs, heading nowhere in particular. They don't hunt like animals. Animals are efficient, purposeful. These things just wander until they find stimulus. Then they converge with terrifying speed and single-mindedness. I watched them take down a mule deer on day 17. The deer came through a valley about a mile north, moving fast, probably running from something. A group of infected, maybe 30 of them, were scattered across the valley floor, barely moving, looking almost dormant. But when the deer got within 100 yards, as they all reacted at once, heads snapping toward it in unison, bodies lurching into motion. The deer was fast, but they were relentless. It took them 40 minutes to corner it against a rock formation. I couldn't see the actual kill from my position, but I heard the deer screaming. Didn't know deer could scream like that. The sound carried across the desert, echoing off the cliffs, lasting longer than it should have. The infected fed for hours. I watched through the binoculars because I needed to know, needed to understand how they behaved, what they did. They're still eating. That's what surprised me. Not just biting to spread infection, but actually consuming flesh like they need the nutrition. Maybe they do. Maybe the virus keeps them moving but doesn't provide energy, so they have to fuel themselves like any other predator. Or maybe it's just programmed behavior, remnant instinct from when they were human and hunger was a thing they understood. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a guy who worked in construction management, who spent his weekends prepping for a disaster everyone said would never come, who happened to be right for all the wrong reasons. After the perimeter check comes work. I'm always working on something because sitting still invites the bad thoughts, invites the memories of people I left behind, invites the question of what the hell I'm surviving for if this is all that's left. So I work. I've spent the last week reinforcing the cabin door with an additional layer of steel plate salvaged from a sheet I brought up. I've improved the water filtration system with an extra stage of UV sterilization powered by a small solar panel. I've built better storage racks that hang from the ceiling, maximizing vertical space. I've organized my ammunition by caliber and condition, cleaned every weapon twice, practiced field stripping and reassembly blindfolded, because if something happens at night, I need to be able to operate by touch alone. I've also been mapping. I brought up surveying equipment, a transit, measuring tapes, a laser rangefinder. And I've been creating detailed topographic maps of the surrounding area with marked locations for everything I've observed. Water sources, potential shelter caves, game trails that deer and elk still use, locations where I've seen infected concentrate, areas that look clear. If I have to leave here, if something forces me down from this perch, I need to know the territory better than anyone. Better than the infected. Better than any other survivors who might be competing for resources. Because that's the other thing I think about during the quiet hours. Other survivors might be more dangerous than the infected. The infected are predictable. They see you, they try to bite you. You shoot them or get away. Simple. But survivors have needs, have desperation, have the capacity to plan and lie and ambush. They might want my vehicles, my supplies, my weapons. They might decide one person doesn't need all this, doesn't deserve to live in safety while others are struggling to survive another day. I'd like to think I'd help if I found other survivors. I'd like to think I'm still human enough to offer assistance, to share supplies, to work together, because that's what humans do. We cooperate. We build communities. We're stronger in groups. But when I really examine my thoughts, when I'm honest with myself, I know that if someone came up that path right now, I'd meet them with a rifle pointed at their chest and very serious questions about their intentions. Trust died when the world did. Now there's only caution and calculated risk. Lunch is eaten cold to conserve fuel. I've got 2 propane tanks and a small camp stove, but propane is finite and I need to make it last through winter. So lunch is usually jerky and dried fruit, or cold beans straight from the can, or pemmican I made before all this started from beef fat and dried berries. It tastes like survival tastes, bland, functional, vaguely unpleasant, but nutritionally adequate. I eat it and I don't complain, because complaining is a waste of energy. Afternoons are for reading and monitoring. I brought up 43 books, mostly practical stuff like edible plant guides, wilderness survival manuals, first aid textbooks, a few technical books on solar power and water management. But also fiction, because a person needs escape. I've got Cormac McCarthy, which feels almost too on the nose now. I've got some old science fiction, some fantasy, a collection of short stories by an author named Zena, whose work I discovered years ago and loved for its strangeness. I ration the fiction like I ration everything else. 1 chapter per evening, something to look forward to. Something to remind me that humans once had the luxury of making up stories about disasters instead of living through them. The monitoring is radio scanning and visual observation. I sweep the shortwave bands methodically, noting any signals, any changes in the static patterns. I've heard 2 transmissions in the past week that might have been human voices, but they were too faint and distorted to confirm. Could have been atmospherics. Could have been my imagination. Could have been recordings playing on loop from abandoned stations, voices of dead people giving warnings nobody hears. I also monitor the sky. Planes stopped flying after the first week, but I still look up every time I hear an engine sound because maybe there's still a military somewhere. Still a functioning government, still people with resources and plans. Haven't seen anything. The contrails that used to crisscross the sky every day are gone. The night sky is darker than I've ever seen it because the light pollution from cities has vanished. I can see the Milky Way now like a river of light overhead. See satellites moving through the constellations. See meteors that I might have missed before in the glow of civilization. It's beautiful. That's the thing nobody tells you about the apocalypse. Parts of it are beautiful in ways the old world couldn't be. The silence is profound. The air smells clean. The desert has a presence now that it lacked when you knew you could leave any time, when it was just a weekend destination between stretches of comfortable urban life. Now it's real in a way it wasn't before. Now I'm part of it instead of visiting it. Now I understand what the old hunter-gatherers must have felt. Living close to the edge, dependent on skills and knowledge and luck. Except they had tribes. They had communities. They had other people to share the burden of survival. I've got myself and the voices of the dead on the radio and the memories that surface when I don't keep them suppressed. Kenzo calls on day 8. Not literally. The phones are dead, and Kenzo is dead too. I'm 90% certain, but I hear his voice anyway while I'm checking the solar panels. He's criticizing my cable routing, saying I'm overthinking it, saying I always overthink everything, saying that's why Talitha left, because I was always preparing for problems instead of living life. I argue back out loud, tell him he's wrong, tell him I'm alive because I prepared, tell him to shut up because he's dead and dead people don't get opinions. Then I realize I'm talking to nobody and I stop. Force myself to breathe. Count to 50, drink water, get back to work. The mind plays tricks when you're alone too long. I know this. I read about it in one of my survival books. Isolation causes hallucinations, causes you to project voices and presences that aren't there, causes your social brain to invent companionship because humans aren't wired to be this alone. It's adaptation gone wrong, a survival mechanism that doesn't know it's making things worse. I start talking to myself after that, but consciously, narrating my actions like I'm making a documentary for an audience that doesn't exist. Now I'm checking the water filter housing for cracks. The O-ring looks good. No signs of contamination in the output. It helps. Gives structure to the silence. Makes me feel less like I'm losing my grip. Evening means dinner and decision-making. Dinner is my biggest meal. Something hot if I decide to use the stove. Something that requires preparation because the ritual of cooking makes it feel more like civilization. Tonight, I make rice with canned chicken and dehydrated vegetables. Rehydrated in purified water, seasoned with salt and pepper and dried herbs from the garden I kept on my apartment balcony and harvested before I left. It tastes good. It tastes like something worth surviving for. While I eat, I make decisions about tomorrow. What maintenance tasks need priority? Whether I should climb higher up the cliff face to check the spring's source. Whether I should risk a scouting trip in the Chevy to a town I can see from here with the binoculars, a small place called Caneville about 12 miles east. See if there are supplies worth scavenging. See if there are survivors. See if I'm still human enough to take that risk. I decide against it every time. The cabin is safe. The supplies are adequate. The risk isn't worth the potential gain. These are the calculations of survival. Cold, logical, selfish. These are the calculations that keep me alive. After dinner, I read my chapter, listen to the radio for my hour of hope and disappointment, then prepare for sleep. Sleep preparation is a ritual. Check the door bolts, check the windows, check that the rifle is loaded and within arm's reach of the cot. Check that the pistol is under the pillow. Check that the flashlight works. Check that the backup flashlight works. Then lie down in the dark and try not to think about the sounds outside. Because there are sounds. Wind mostly, moving through the rock formations. Creating tones and whistles and moans that sound almost like voices if you let your imagination run. Sometimes I hear rock falls, small stones tumbling down the cliff face, natural erosion or temperature changes making things shift. Sometimes I hear the infected down below, their vocalization carrying up the cliff, not words, not screams exactly. Just sounds that human throats make when the mind behind them is broken. Low groaning, clicking, wet, raspy breathing that might be their damaged respiratory systems or might be some form of communication I don't understand. I've started having dreams. Not nightmares exactly, though those come too. Mostly I dream about normalcy. Dream about walking into a coffee shop and ordering a latte. About the barista, some random person my brain invents, asking how my day is. About sitting at a table with my laptop checking emails that don't matter. About the comfortable, mundane rhythm of a life that felt boring at the time, but now seems impossibly precious. I dream about driving on a highway with other cars, with traffic, with people going places because they had places to go and things to do and futures to plan for. I wake from these dreams disoriented, reaching for my phone to check the time before remembering phones don't work, before remembering what world I'm in now. Then I lie there in the dark waiting for dawn because going back to sleep means more dreams, and I'm not sure which is worse. The dreams of what's lost or the reality of what remains. Day 44 begins like all the others. Dawn light through the skylights, the automatic wake-up call of biology and architecture combined. My body aches. I'm 41 years old, and sleeping on a cot while doing manual labor every day is wearing me down in ways I didn't anticipate. I've got persistent pain in my lower back. My knees crack when I stand. My hands are developing calluses on top of calluses from tool work and climbing. I'm in decent shape, always have been. But decent shape for modern life and decent shape for apocalypse survival are different standards. I do stretches before I do anything else. Yoga poses I learned from a girlfriend years ago. Movements that keep my spine flexible and my muscles loose. Downward dog, cobra pose, pigeon stretch, spinal twists. It looks ridiculous, probably. A lone man doing yoga in a cabin at the top of a cliff while the world falls apart below. But it works. Keeps me functional. Keeps the pain manageable. Breakfast is instant coffee. Real coffee, not the chicory substitute some preppers recommend because life's too short and the world's too dead to drink fake coffee. And granola with powdered milk. I'm running low on granola. Another 40 days and I'll be out. Then it's oatmeal for breakfast every day until that's gone too. Then I'm into the bulk rice and beans for all meals. The timeline of supplies is a countdown I don't want to think about, but can't avoid. Every meal consumed is a meal I'll never get back. Every day survived is one day closer to the moment when I have to make serious decisions about taking serious risks. The morning perimeter check reveals something new. From the solar panel ledge, scanning with binoculars, I spot a vehicle on the old highway that runs through the valley 7 miles south. It's moving, actually driving, heading west at maybe 30 miles per hour. I watch it for 10 minutes, tracking its progress, trying to see details. It's a large truck, maybe a semi. Definitely something heavy and capable. The distance is too great to see if there are infected around it, to see if it's being pursued or if it's moving freely. I debate trying to signal it. I've got mirrors, I've got flares, I've got ways to make myself visible if I wanted to. But I don't know who's driving. Don't know their intentions. Don't know if making contact would be salvation or disaster. So I watch it disappear toward the horizon, and I feel something twist in my chest. Regret, loneliness, fear, all mixed together into an emotion I don't have a name for. That's the thing about survival. It requires you to turn off parts of yourself that make you human. The instinct to help others, to form connections, to trust. These are luxuries I can't afford. So I watch the truck go, and I tell myself I made the right choice. And I don't entirely believe it. The rest of the morning is spent on a project I've been avoiding. The cabin's waste management system is getting full. I've been using a composting toilet I built before all this. A 5-gallon bucket with a toilet seat and a system for managing solid waste with sawdust and peat moss. It works well enough, but it needs emptying every 2 weeks, and that means hauling the waste bucket to a location far enough from the cabin that it won't attract animals or create sanitation issues, but close enough that the trip doesn't expose me to unnecessary risk. I've chosen a crevasse about 200 yards north along the cliff ledge. A deep crack in the rock where I can dump waste, and it'll fall far enough that it becomes someone else's problem. Nature's problem, technically. But nature's got bigger problems now. The hike takes 20 minutes, moving carefully on the narrow ledge, rifle slung over my back, waste bucket in one gloved hand. The smell is terrible even with the composting process. This is the reality of survival nobody talks about. The disgust, the degradation, the way you become intimately familiar with your own waste products because management of bodily functions is suddenly a complex logistical challenge. I dump the bucket, rinse it with a small amount of water I brought for that purpose, head back to the cabin. The whole process takes an hour and leaves me feeling dirty and tired and slightly depressed. This is my life now. This is what I survived for. The chance to dump my own shit in a crevasse while the world rots below me. But I'm alive. That counts for something, has to count for something. Afternoon brings a dust storm, common this time of year, winds picking up from the southwest and carrying a wall of brown haze across the desert. Visibility drops to near zero. I secure everything on the platform that could blow away, which isn't much. I've learned to keep things tied down. And retreat into the cabin. The storm batters the structure for 3 hours, wind howling around the rocks, dust finding every tiny gap in the walls and seeping inside as fine powder that coats everything. I spend the time cleaning my weapons, field stripping each one, checking for dust contamination, oiling moving parts, ensuring everything will function if needed. It's meditative work, familiar motions that my hands know without thinking. The pistols are all Glocks, 17, 19, and a 43 for concealment, though concealment seems pointless now. The rifles are an AR-15 I built from parts, and a Ruger 10-22 for small game. The shotgun is a Mossberg 500, 12 gauge, loaded with buckshot and slugs alternating. Each weapon has a purpose, a role in potential scenarios I've mentally rehearsed dozens of times. Scenario 1. Infected breach the platform somehow. Use the AR-15, controlled shots, conserve ammunition, fall back to the cabin interior if necessary. Scenario 2. Hostile survivors approach. Depends on their numbers and weapons. Negotiate from behind cover if possible, but be ready to use overwhelming force if they don't back down. Scenario 3. I'm injured and need to defend the cabin with reduced mobility. Shotgun, barricade the door, make them come through a fatal funnel where one shot takes multiple targets. These scenarios play through my head like movies. I've thought through the tactics, the positioning, the backup plans. But thinking and doing are different. I've never shot a person. I've trained, I've practiced on targets, I know how to operate the weapons. But putting a round through human flesh, watching someone drop because of my action, that's different. That's the line I haven't crossed yet, and I don't know how I'll handle it if I have to. The infected don't count. I've decided this. They're not people anymore, and whatever they look like. They're carriers of a disease that destroys the person and leaves behind a mobile infection vector. Shooting them is no different than putting down a rabid animal. This is what I tell myself. This is how I sleep after seeing them through the scope. The storm clears by late afternoon. I venture outside to assess damage and find the platform covered in a layer of fine dust 1/2 inch thick. It takes an hour to sweep and clean everything, to check that the storm didn't compromise any of the critical systems. The solar panels are coated and their output has dropped by 40%. I spend another hour carefully cleaning each panel with a soft brush and minimal water, restoring them to full efficiency. While I'm up on the solar ledge, I spot movement in the valley below. Not infected. The movement is wrong for that. I grab the binoculars and focus. It's a coyote, thin and mangy looking, trotting across the open ground with nervous backward glances. I watch it for 5 minutes before I see what it's running from. A pack of infected, maybe 15 strong, moving in loose formation about 300 yards behind the coyote. They're not actively chasing, but they're following the scent or the sound, tracking the way predators track with terrible patience. The coyote reaches a cluster of boulders and disappears into them. The infected arrive 10 minutes later and mill around the area, searching, unable to solve the problem of where their prey went. Eventually, they lose interest and wander off in different directions. The coyote emerges 1/2 hour after that, watches them leave, then continues on its way. Smart animal. smarter than most humans were when this started. People forgot that sometimes the right move is to hide and wait instead of fighting or running. People forgot that survival isn't about heroics or making stands. It's about being still when you need to be still, and being invisible and when you need to be invisible, and making the hard choices that keep you breathing one more day. I'm proof of that. I'm alive not because I'm brave or skilled or blessed. I'm alive because when things got bad, I ran and hid and let other people be heroes. That makes me a coward by old world standards. But old world standards died with the old world. Now there are only new standards, and the primary one is simple. Did you survive? Yes? Then you did something right. Dinner is canned stew, heated on the propane stove because I need the morale boost of hot food. The stew tastes like salt and meat and vegetables that were never fresh to begin with. But it's hot and substantial, and that makes it feel like a feast. I eat slowly, making it last, savoring each bite like it matters because it does matter, because small pleasures are all I have left. While I eat, I plan tomorrow. There's a section of the cliff path about halfway down that's showing erosion. I noticed it during the last perimeter check. If it deteriorates further, it could compromise my exit route, could trap me up here. So tomorrow, I need to go down there with climbing gear and tools, assess the damage, see if I can reinforce it with rock bolts and cement. It's dangerous work, exposed, hanging on the cliff face while trying to drill into stone. But necessary. The path is my lifeline. Without it, I'm just a man trapped on a high shelf waiting to starve. The radio gives me nothing tonight. Just static and the occasional burst of carrier wave that cuts off after a few seconds. I scan through all the emergency frequencies, all the ham bands, all the shortwave broadcasters that used to fill the spectrum with news and music and voices. Nothing. The electromagnetic spectrum is quiet, like the world is quiet, empty of human transmission, returned to the natural background radiation of the universe. I wonder sometimes if I'm the last one. Not the last person alive. That seems statistically impossible given the size of the world. But the last one in this region, this section of desert, this empty quadrant of Utah. Maybe everyone else died or fled to cities or refugee centers, leaving me alone with the infected and the animals and the wind. Maybe that truck I saw this morning was the last vehicle I'll ever see. Maybe years from now, some survivor or scavenger will find this cabin and wonder who built it, who lived here, who survived alone until they didn't. These thoughts spiral if I let them, so I don't let them. I finish my food, clean the pot, put everything away. I read my chapter, McCarthy tonight. The scene where the man and the boy find the bunker full of supplies. That moment of grace in a dead world. That reminder that good things still exist, even in the worst circumstances. The passage makes me emotional in ways I don't expect. I stop reading and sit there in the lamplight, just breathing, just existing, just holding on to the feeling that maybe there's still meaning in survival, still purpose in continuing. Sleep comes harder tonight. I lie awake listening to sounds that might be nothing or might be everything. The wind has picked up again, moving through the rocks in ways that sound like voices, like whispers, like conversations happening just out of earshot. I know it's wind. I know it's acoustics and resonance, and the way air moves through gaps in stone. But part of my brain insists it's something else. Something that requires investigation. Something threatening. I get up 3 times to check the door, to look out the windows, to confirm that nothing's on the platform, nothing's climbing the path. Each time it's nothing. Each time I feel foolish for checking. But foolish and alive is better than brave and dead. So I check anyway. Finally, maybe 2 in the morning, based on the star positions visible through the skylight, I fall into restless sleep. I dream about Talitha, about our wedding day 9 years ago, about how happy we looked in the photos, how confident we were that we'd figured out the secret to making it work when so many marriages failed. The dream shifts and we're arguing about the vehicles, about the money I spent, about my obsession with preparation in worst-case scenarios. She's crying, saying I've changed, saying I used to be fun, used to be spontaneous, used to be someone who lived for today, instead of constantly planning for disaster. In the dream, I try to explain that I'm right, that I saw this coming, that she should have listened. But she just fades away, becomes transparent, becomes nothing. And I'm reaching for her and she's gone, and I wake up with my hand extended into darkness and a weight in my chest that feels like drowning. Dawn is a relief. Sunrise means structure, means routine, means I can stop lying in the dark with my thoughts and start doing things that matter. I go through the morning ritual. Stretches, coffee, breakfast, perimeter check. Everything's normal. Everything's as safe as it gets in a world where safety is provisional and temporary. The climb down to the eroded section happens mid-morning. I gear up carefully, climbing harness, helmet, rope, rack of protection, tool bag with drill and rock bolts and cement. The climb to the problem area is straightforward, easy 5.5 terrain that I've done dozens of times. But once I reach the spot and assess the situation, I realize it's worse than it looked from above. The erosion has undercut a section of the path about 6 feet wide, removing support from beneath. The surface looks stable, but it's hanging over a void, and anything heavy, like a vehicle, would likely punch through. This needs serious work. I set up an anchor above the path, rappelled down to examine the underside, confirm my fears. The rock here is weathered sandstone, fractured and friable, not good substrate for bolts. I'm going to need to build a support structure, probably wooden beams wedged between the stable rock on either side, with a deck on top to carry the weight. That means hauling timber down from the cabin, means multiple trips, means days of work hanging on this cliff face. It's doable, but dangerous and exhausting. I spend an hour just planning the work, sketching the design in my notepad, calculating what materials I need, what tools, what sequence of steps will minimize risk. While I'm hanging there on rope, focused on the problem, I hear something from below. Voices, actual human voices, not infected moans, not wind through rocks. My heart rate doubles instantly. I freeze, become absolutely still, just listen. 2 men, maybe 3. They're at the base of the cliff path, down where it starts. Their voices carry up the rock face, distorted by distance and echoes, but unmistakably human. I can't make out words, but I can hear the rhythm of conversation, hear questions and answers, hear what might be laughter. My mind races through implications. They found the path. They're discussing it. They might try to climb it. If they make it up here, if they reach the platform, they'll find the cabin, the vehicles, the supplies. They'll find me. And then what? Do I welcome them as fellow survivors? Do I turn them away? Do I defend my resources with force if necessary? I stay frozen for 20 minutes, just listening. The voices continue for a while, then fade. Maybe they decided the path was too dangerous. Maybe they went looking for easier routes. Maybe they're circling around, trying to find another approach. I don't know, and the not knowing is worse than any definite threat. Finally, I ascend back to the platform, moving fast, abandoning the careful pace I normally maintain. I need to see, need to know what's happening. I reach the solar ledge and grab the binoculars, scan the base of the cliff. Nothing. No people. No movement. I expand the search pattern, checking the surrounding area in expanding circles. Still nothing. They're gone. Or hiding. Or maybe I imagined them. Maybe the isolation is getting to me worse than I thought, making me hear things that aren't there, making me paranoid beyond reason. But the voices felt real. They had the quality of reality, the texture of actual human speech in ways my imagination hasn't produced before. I spend the rest of the day hyper-vigilant, constantly checking angles, watching approaches, listening for any sound that doesn't belong. I bring the AR-15 with me everywhere, even just moving around the platform. I don't work on the path erosion problem. I don't do any maintenance tasks. I just watch and wait and try to decide if what I heard was real or if my mind is breaking under the strain of prolonged isolation. By evening, I haven't seen anything else. No people, no movement except the usual infected wandering in the distance. The voices don't return. Maybe they were just passing through, heading somewhere else. No interest in a cliff path that leads to nothing they could see. Maybe they were survivors with their own destination, their own plan, their own refuge somewhere in this dead landscape. Or maybe I'm losing it. Maybe this is how it starts, hearing voices, seeing things, the slow slide into unreliability and madness. That's the fear that keeps me up this night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I can trust my own perception anymore, wondering how you're supposed to know when you've crossed the line from sane to broken. Day 46 brings rain, the first significant rain since I arrived. It starts just after dawn, heavy drops that smell like ozone and dust, turning the desert floor into patterns of dark and light as the soil absorbs water for the first time in months. I set out every container I have to catch rainwater, supplementing my spring supply with water that's already pure, already clean, not filtered through rock and potentially contaminated. The rain is mesmerizing. I stand on the platform and watch it fall, watch it create temporary streams down the cliff face, watch the desert transform. Rain used to be an inconvenience in the old world, something that disrupted plans and made you grab an umbrella. Now it's a gift, a resource, a reason for optimism. The water tanks fill faster than usual. The solar panels get cleaned naturally. The air becomes breathable in ways it hasn't been since the dust storm. I'm so focused on the rain that I almost miss them. Movement at the base of the cliff path. I grab the binoculars and my stomach drops. 3 men, definitely real this time, starting up the path. They're armed. I can see rifles slung over their backs. They're taking the path slowly, testing each step, looking up frequently like they expect trouble. Decision time. Do I let them climb? Do I wait until they're higher and then call out, warn them off from a position of advantage? Do I shoot to deter them before they get too close? My hands are shaking. The rifle feels heavy. This is the moment I've dreaded. The moment when theory becomes practice. When I have to choose what kind of person I'm going to be in this new world. I watch them climb. They're a third of the way up now, moving carefully but competently. They've got climbing experience, know how to read rock, know how to balance and shift weight. These aren't desperate refugees stumbling around. These are capable men with intent and purpose. I make my decision. I grab the AR-15, take position behind the concrete barrier I built at the platform edge, and chamber around. The sound carries. One of the men looks up at the noise. I see his face through the scope. Mid-30s, bearded, alert eyes. Not infected, not crazy. Just a survivor like me. I call out, voice steady despite the fear. That's far enough. This is private property. Turn around and leave. The 3 men stop. They look at each other, have a quick discussion I can't hear. Then the bearded one cups his hands and shouts up, "We're not looking for trouble, friend. Just saw the path and wanted to check if anyone was alive up there. We're from a group about 15 miles south. We're trying to map safe zones, find survivors, establish trade routes. Can we talk?" Trade routes, groups, organization. These are words from the old world, words that suggest maybe there's more than just isolated survivors hiding and waiting to die. But they're also words that could be lies, bait, a way to get me to lower my guard. "Talk from there," I shout back. "Don't come any closer." The bearded man nods. "Fair enough. My name is Garrett. These are Ulysses and Thane. We're part of a community at an old mining facility. We've got about 40 people, good defenses, sustainable food and water. We're trying to connect with other survivors, see if we can build something larger. Safety in numbers, you know?" I don't respond immediately. My mind is working through angles, through possibilities, through the question of whether this is genuine or a sophisticated threat. 40 people is a lot. A mining facility would be defensible. But it also means 40 mouths to feed, 40 different agendas, 40 potential points of conflict and danger. "How'd you find this path?" I asked. "We've been mapping the region for 3 weeks, Garrett says. "We use drones, spot places that look inhabited or defensible, send scouting parties to check them out. Your tire tracks at the base are pretty obvious once you know where to look." Drones. That's technology I didn't expect survivors to have operational. But it makes sense. A lot of consumer drones have long battery life, can be charged from solar, would be invaluable for scouting in a world where moving around is deadly. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Nothing right now," Garrett says. "Just wanted to make contact, let you know we exist, offer the option of trade or cooperation if you're interested. We've got medical supplies, seeds, tools, skills. If you've got things we need, we can work something out. If you don't want contact, that's fine too. We're not raiders. We're trying to build, not take." It sounds reasonable. It sounds like exactly what I'd want to hear if I was looking for hope, for community, for a way back to something resembling civilization. Which makes me suspicious. Reasonable offers are how you get people to lower their defenses. Appealing to hope is how you manipulate the desperate. But also, 40 people, organization, resources. If they're genuine, they represent possibilities I dismissed as extinct. They represent the chance that survival might eventually mean more than just existing alone on a cliff. "I need time to think about this," I say. "Come back in 3 days, same time. We can talk more then." Garrett nods. "That's fair. We'll be here. Think about it. Think about whether you want to spend the rest of your life alone or whether you want to be part of something bigger." He and his companions start backing down the path, moving carefully, keeping their weapons pointed away in a non-threatening posture. I watch them descend. Watch them reach the bottom and head south, disappearing into the landscape. Then I lower the rifle and sit down hard because my legs are shaking. Because adrenaline is crashing. Because I just had my first human interaction in 46 days, and I don't know if it was a lifeline or a trap. The rest of the day is useless for productivity. I can't focus on tasks, can't stop running through the conversation, analyzing every word, every inflection, looking for signs of deception or truth. I pace the platform, check the path obsessively, imagine scenarios where I made the wrong choice, where they come back with more people, where this becomes a siege instead of an offer. But I also imagine scenarios where they're genuine, where there really is a community surviving and organizing, where I could have allies, backup, people to share the burden with, where I could stop being so utterly alone. That night I don't sleep at all. I sit in the dark with the rifle across my lap, watching the approach, listening for sounds of infiltration. Nothing happens. The night passes quiet, except for the usual wind and the usual distant sounds of infected moving through the valley below. When dawn comes, I'm exhausted and wired, and no closer to knowing what I should do. Day 47 is spent preparing for multiple contingencies. If I decide to make contact with Garrett's group, I need to have an exit strategy, need to have the vehicles ready to bug out fast if things go wrong. If I decide to refuse contact, I need to be prepared for the possibility that they won't accept refusal, that they'll try to take what I have by force. So I prepare. I pack both vehicles with essential supplies, enough to survive for 2 weeks without returning here. I create caches along the cliff path, hidden spots where I stash food, water, ammunition, medical supplies. If I have to run, if I have to abandon the cabin, I'll have resources staged for fallback positions. I also improve my defensive setup. I rig a simple alarm system using fishing line and bells at various points along the path, so I'll have warning if anyone tries to climb at night. I build a better fighting position at the platform edge, using filled sandbags to create cover with good sight lines down the path. I clean and check every weapon again, load extra magazines, stage them around the cabin so I'm never more than a few feet from firepower. By evening, I'm as ready as I can be for whatever happens in 2 days when Garrett returns. If he returns, if this wasn't just reconnaissance for a raid they're planning for tonight or tomorrow. The uncertainty is corrosive. It eats at my thoughts, makes rest impossible, makes me question every decision I've made since hearing those first voices at the cliff base. The radio provides no distraction. Still nothing but static and the occasional phantom signal that could be atmospheric phenomena or could be my imagination filling in patterns where none exist. I've stopped hoping for broadcasts, stopped expecting to hear organized government responses or rescue operations. If those things existed, if there was still functioning authority somewhere, they'd be broadcasting constantly. They'd be trying to reach survivors, trying to coordinate. The silence tells me everything I need to know about the state of the world beyond my immediate area. Day 48 brings no sign of Garrett or his people. I spend the day on high alert anyway, constantly checking approaches, jumping at every sound. The stress is exhausting. By afternoon, I realize I can't maintain this level of vigilance. It's not sustainable. It'll wear me down faster than any physical threat. So I force myself to do normal routine tasks, force myself to work on the path erosion problem even though part of my brain is screaming that I should be watching, should be ready, should be preparing for attack. The work on the path takes my full attention once I commit to it. I lower tools and lumber down on ropes, build a temporary platform to work from, start constructing the support structure for the compromised section. It's delicate work, precise work, work that requires focus and blocks out everything else. For a few hours, I'm not afraid. I'm just a person solving a problem, using skills and knowledge to overcome an obstacle. It feels normal in a way. Nothing else has felt in weeks. By evening, I've got the basic frame in place. Tomorrow, I can deck it and test the structure with weight. If it holds, the path will be secure again, and I'll have one less thing to worry about. The accomplishment feels good. Small victories matter when there's so little to celebrate. That night, I dream about my mother, dead now for 5 years before any of this started. In the dream, she's making dinner in the kitchen of my childhood home, humming something I don't recognize, and I'm sitting at the table watching her. She asks about my day, and I tell her about the path repair, about the infected below, about being alone on a cliff while the world dies. She listens without judgment, just nods and keeps cooking. And when the food is ready, she sets a plate in front of me and says, "You were always good at fixing things, Nyx." That's my name. The one detail I haven't mentioned in this entire narrative, because names matter, and speaking your own name when there's nobody to hear it feels like admitting you're talking to yourself. But in the dream, my mother uses it, and it anchors me, reminds me that I'm a specific person with a history and an identity. Not just a survivor, not just a function of circumstances. I wake up crying, which is embarrassing even though there's nobody to see it. I let myself cry for maybe 5 minutes, getting it out, acknowledging the grief and loss and loneliness. Then I stop, wipe my face, drink water, get control. Crying is fine in small doses, but you can't let it become a habit. Can't let it undermine the strength you need to keep going. Day 49 brings the return of Garrett and his companions. They arrive exactly at the time we discussed, approaching openly, calling out before they start climbing, doing everything right to signal peaceful intentions. I watch them ascend from my fighting position, rifle ready but not aimed, trying to evaluate threat level and sincerity in equal measure. They stop at the same place as before, about a third of the way up. Garrett waves. "Good morning. Hope you had time to think things over." "I did," I call back. Still have questions. "Ask them. That's why we're here." I've prepared a list in my mind, questions designed to probe for inconsistency or deception. "You said you have 40 people. How do you feed them? Where does the food come from?" Garrett doesn't hesitate. "We've got a greenhouse operation using hydroponics, powered by solar and a small wind turbine setup. Also hunting and some preserved supplies from before. It's tight, but we manage. Everyone works, everyone contributes. It's not luxury, but nobody starves." "Water?" "Underground spring at the mining facility. Clean, tested, adequate flow for our current population. We've also got rainwater collection and filtration systems." "Security? How do you keep 40 people safe from infected?" "The facility is surrounded by chain link and razor wire we reinforced. We've got watchtowers, regular patrols, protocols for dealing with breaches. Lost 3 people in the first month to attacks. Haven't lost anyone in the past 6 weeks. We learned, adapted, got better at defense." The answers sound practiced, but also specific enough to be real. Details you wouldn't invent: the hydroponics, the spring, the timeline of casualties. I push harder. "Why do you need to find other survivors? Why not just stay secure and isolated?" "Because 40 people isn't enough for long-term viability," Garrett says. "We need genetic diversity if we're thinking in terms of generations. We need skills we don't have: medical training, mechanical expertise, agricultural knowledge beyond what we figured out through trial and error. We need trade partners for supplies we can't produce. And honestly, we need hope that humanity is more than just our small group. We need to know there are others, that we're not the last remnant holding on until we inevitably fail." That answer resonates in ways I don't want to acknowledge. Because I've had the same thoughts during the quiet hours, the same fears about what survival means if it's just postponing inevitable extinction. If Garrett's group is real, if there are communities organizing and planning for futures instead of just day-to-day survival, that changes the equation. That makes continuing worthwhile in ways solitude doesn't. "What would trade look like?" I asked, hypothetically. "Depends on what you have and what you need. Medical supplies, ammunition, fuel, food, tools, technical equipment, all valuable. We do barter, straight exchange of goods. No currency, no credit, just honest trade between parties who both benefit. If you've got surplus of something we need, we offer surplus of something you need. Simple. It does sound simple, maybe too simple. But also, in a world stripped back to basics, maybe simplicity is what works. Maybe the complex systems that define the old world, finance, credit, abstract value, are liabilities now. Maybe direct exchange is the only thing that makes sense. What's the catch? I ask. What aren't you telling me? Garrett is quiet for a moment. Then, the catch is that we're struggling. 40 people is barely sustainable. We're one bad harvest from food crisis, one serious injury from medical emergency we can't handle, one infected breach from catastrophe. We're trying to build something that lasts, but we're not there yet. We need help. We need allies. If we can't expand our network, if we can't create redundancy and mutual support systems, we'll probably fail eventually. That's the honest truth. We're not some thriving community with everything figured out. We're survivors trying to create stability in a world that resists it. The honesty is either genuine or brilliantly calculated. I can't tell which. But I respect the admission of vulnerability, the acknowledgement of precariousness. If it's a lie, it's a sophisticated one. If it's truth, it's the kind of truth that demands consideration. I need more time, I say. This is a big decision. Come back in a week. I'll have an answer then. Garrett nods. That's reasonable. One thing, though, we're not the only ones out here. We've encountered other groups, some friendly, some hostile. Raiders who take instead of trade, desperate people who'll do anything to survive, infected that are getting smarter, or at least more organized. If you're planning to stay isolated, be aware that isolation gets harder over time. The world is changing. Staying still might feel safe, but it's also a risk. With that warning delivered, they descend again. I watch until they're out of sight. Then I sit down and try to process everything. The conversation felt different than the first one. More honest, more vulnerable, more like a genuine attempt at connection rather than a sales pitch. But my paranoia whispers that this is exactly how con artists work. Building trust through staged admissions of weakness, creating empathy that can be exploited. The next 7 days are going to be difficult. I have to make a decision that could determine whether I survive long term or whether I'm making a fatal mistake. And I have to make it with incomplete information, with no way to verify claims, with only my judgment and instincts to guide me. I spend the rest of day 49 finishing the path repair. The structure holds when I test it, supporting my weight and then some. Stable enough that I feel confident driving the vehicles over it, if necessary. That's one problem solved. But the bigger problem, the question of isolation versus community, safety versus opportunity, remains unresolved. That evening, I do something I haven't done since arriving. I climb down the cliff face beyond the path, using ropes and protection, descending several hundred feet to a ledge that gives me a different view of the surrounding territory. It's risky, exposed, outside my safe zone. But I need perspective. Need to see the landscape from a different angle. Need to prove to myself that I'm still capable of taking calculated risks instead of hiding behind defenses. From this ledge, I can see further south, toward where Garrett claimed his community exists. There's a mountain range in that direction. Several old mining operations that I know about from before. I scan with binoculars, looking for any sign of habitation, smoke, lights, structures. I see nothing definitive, but the distance is substantial and it's getting dark. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. The climb back up is harder than the descent. My arms are tired, my fingers are getting numb from gripping holds, and the exposure is more apparent when you're ascending. but I make it without incident. Reach the platform as full dark settles. Collapse into the cabin exhausted but satisfied that I proved something to myself about capability and courage. Sleep comes easier that night. The physical exertion helps, burns off the anxiety and nervous energy that have been building. I dream, but not about loss or the past. I dream about climbing, about movement, about ascending towards something I can't quite see but know is important. It's not a nightmare. It might even be hope. The days between meeting 49 and meeting 56 pass in a blur of preparation and internal debate. I don't just prepare for one outcome. I prepare for multiple. If I decide to make contact with Garrett's group, I need protocols for safe meetings, for verification, for gradual trust building that doesn't expose me to unnecessary risk. If I decide to refuse contact, I need plans for discouraging further attempts, for remaining hidden, for dealing with potential hostility. I also do research, as much as I can from my position. I study the landscape toward the south using binoculars and the spotting scope I brought up. I track movements, infected animals, possible human activity, though nothing definitive. I listen to the radio more carefully, scanning for any transmissions that might be coming from the direction of Garrett's claimed community. Nothing concrete emerges, but I develop a better sense of the region, a better mental map of what's out there. Day 53 brings an incident that influences my thinking. I'm watching the valley floor through the scope when I spot a group of infected surrounding something. Initially, I think it's an animal they've cornered. But as I focus, I realize it's a person. A woman, trapped on top of a delivery truck, infected massing below, reaching up, groaning that distinctive sound that carries across the distance. She's got maybe 20 of them around her, maybe more I can't see from my angle. She's armed. I can see a pistol in her hand. But she's conserving ammunition, not shooting unless one gets too close to climbing up. She's trapped but alive, making the calculation that bullets are finite and she needs to make them count. I watch this for an hour. The standoff continues. She's not panicking, not wasting shots, just waiting for... what? For them to leave? They won't leave. They've got stimulus, got target. They'll stay until she makes a mistake or runs out of resources or passes out from exhaustion. I could help. I'm close enough, maybe a mile away. I could climb down, take one of the vehicles, drive there, use firepower and the armored truck to draw the infected away or eliminate them. Could save her life. Could gain an ally, could prove to myself that I'm still human enough to help strangers in need. But doing so exposes me, reveals my position, uses ammunition and fuel. Risks damage to my vehicle, risks infection if things go wrong. The calculus of survival says to watch and do nothing, to let her live or die based on her own capabilities, to preserve my resources for my own continued existence. I watch for another hour, rifle in hand, debating. The woman is still holding position, still conserving ammunition, still waiting. In the end, I do nothing. I can't articulate exactly why beyond the cold logic of self-preservation. But also, I don't know her. Don't know her skills or intentions. Don't know if saving her would create an obligation I can't fulfill, a connection that would compromise my isolation. So I watch and I hate myself a little bit for watching, but I don't intervene. By evening, she's still alive, still trapped. I lose visual as darkness falls. The next morning, I check the location and she's gone. Either escaped or taken, or I don't want to think about the third option. The delivery truck sits empty. The infected have dispersed. I'll never know what happened, never know if I could have made a difference. The incident weighs on me as day 56 approaches, because if Garrett's group is genuine, if they're trying to build something based on cooperation and mutual aid, then I'm exactly the kind of person who would undermine that. Someone who watched another human in desperate need and calculated that helping wasn't worth the cost. But also, survival requires hard choices, requires prioritizing your own existence over others, requires accepting that you can't save everyone, can't help everyone, can't be responsible for everyone. Day 56 arrives cold and windy. Garrett and his companions appear at the appointed time, climbing to the same stopping point, waiting for my response. I've spent the previous night rehearsing this conversation in my head, trying to articulate thoughts and concerns in ways that make sense. I'm interested, I call down, but I need conditions. I need verification before I commit to anything. I need to see your community, meet your people, confirm that what you're telling me is real. And I need assurance that I can leave if things aren't what you claim. No hostility, no attempts to keep me there or take my resources. Garrett considers this. That's fair. We can arrange a visit. You come to our facility, tour the operation, meet people, ask questions. If you're not satisfied, you leave. We don't force anyone to stay. Don't coerce cooperation. It has to be voluntary or it doesn't work. How would it work logistically? We meet at a neutral location. There's an abandoned rest stop about 8 miles south of here. You bring one vehicle, we bring one vehicle. We escort you to the facility. You spend a day looking around. Then we escort you back to the rest stop. You keep your weapons, you keep your vehicle. You stay in control of your exit strategy the whole time. It sounds reasonable. It also sounds like the setup for an ambush. Isolated location, controlled travel route, me separated from my primary refuge. Every instinct says it's a trap. But if it is a trap, they've had opportunities to spring it already. They could have brought more people, could have tried to overwhelm me with numbers. They haven't. They've been patient, transparent, willing to accommodate concerns. I'll do it, I say. 3 days from now, I'll meet you at the rest stop at noon. Garrett nods. 3 days. Noon. We'll be there. This is a good decision, Nyx. The use of my name jolts me. I never told them my name. How did you... Your vehicles, Garrett says. They've got registration plates, VIN numbers. We've got someone in our group who used to work DMV, still has database access through old records. We looked you up. Nyx Sorenson. 41, Salt Lake City address. Divorced. No kids. Worked construction management. Bought a lot of climbing equipment over the years. Built 2 modified vehicles that were registered for street use despite being basically tanks. You've been preparing for a long time. The research feels invasive, but also practical. Of course, they'd check who they were dealing with. Of course, they'd use available information to assess risk and compatibility. I'd have done the same if I had the capability. Anything else you know about me? I ask. Nothing that matters beyond what I just said. We're not interested in your past, just your capabilities and intentions. From what we can tell, you're competent, resourceful, and serious about survival. That's valuable. That's what we need. See you in 3 days, I say. And Garrett and his companions descend one final time. The next 3 days are the strangest yet. I'm committed now. Committed to leaving my refuge, to taking a risk that could be salvation or disaster. I prepare meticulously. Pack the Chevy with supplies, weapons, tools for basic repairs. I create documentation of my cabin's location, my cache positions, my protocols, and hide copies in multiple locations in case I don't come back and someone else finds this place eventually. I write a letter to Kenzo, even though Kenzo is dead, explaining my decisions, justifying my choices, asking for forgiveness for all the times I was difficult or distant or too focused on preparing for catastrophe instead of living in the present. I burn the letter on the morning I leave. No point in leaving evidence of weakness, of sentiment, of the things I regret. The past is done. Only the future matters now, however uncertain it might be. The drive down the cliff path is nerve-wracking. I haven't driven in almost 60 days, and the path is narrow and treacherous in ways that feel more dangerous now that I'm in the vehicle instead of on foot. But the repairs hold. The Chevy handles well. I reach the bottom without incident and turn south, following old Highway 24 toward the rest stop. The desert looks different from ground level, less secure, less manageable. The cliff refuge gave me perspective, gave me the illusion of control because I could see threats coming from a distance. Down here, everything feels closer, more immediate. I drive slowly, constantly scanning, rifle on the passenger seat within easy reach. The rest stop appears after an hour of careful driving. It's exactly what Garrett described, an abandoned building with gas pumps that haven't worked in months, parking area, restrooms, picnic tables, and parked in front, a large truck with reinforced sides and gun ports. Garrett and 3 others are standing next to it, waiting. I pull in at a distance, engine running, ready to reverse if this goes wrong. Garrett walks forward slowly, hands visible, empty. "Glad you came," he calls out. "Ready to see what we've built?" I grab the rifle, step out of the Chevy, keep the vehicle between me and them. Ready as I'll be. Let's go. The journey to the mining facility takes another hour, driving through terrain that's more remote and rugged than what I'm used to. Garrett's truck leads. I follow at a distance that gives me reaction time if they try something. We pass through areas where the infected presence is obvious. Abandoned vehicles, bodies in various states of decay, signs of struggle and flight. But no active threats, no infected visible during our transit. The facility sits at the base of a mountain, surrounded by the fencing Garrett described. The setup is impressive. Reinforced gates, watchtowers with actual guards visible. Sections of cleared ground, creating kill zones around the perimeter. This isn't amateur hour. Whoever designed this defense knew what they were doing. We stop at the gate. Garrett gets out, speaks to the guards, gestures back at me. After a brief exchange, the gates open, and we drive through into a compound that's much larger than I expected. Multiple buildings, garden plots visible in the distance, people moving around doing tasks. An organized community that looks functional and established. Garrett parks and walks back to my vehicle. "Welcome to New Prospect." That's what we call it. Probably too optimistic, but it helps with morale. Let me show you around. The next several hours are a blur of introductions and tours. I meet Delphine, the de facto leader, a woman in her 50s with medical training and a calm authority that people clearly respect. I meet Ulysses properly, the younger man from the first contact who turns out to be an engineer responsible for much of the facility's technical systems. I meet Reyna, who manages the greenhouse operation, and Knox, who coordinates security and patrol schedules. I see the hydroponics setup. Impressive, well-designed, producing actual food in quantities that support the population. I see the living quarters, cramped but organized, everyone having private space but sharing common areas. I see the armory, well-stocked with weapons and ammunition, but also carefully controlled with clear protocols for access. I see the medical bay, basic but functional, with someone who actually knows medicine running it. Everything Garrett told me appears to be true. This is a real community, really surviving, really trying to build something sustainable. The people I meet are cautious, but not hostile. Curious about the outsider, but not threatening. Many of them tell me their stories, where they were when it started, how they ended up here, what they lost. The stories are variations on a theme. Everyone lost someone. Everyone made hard choices. Everyone is here because they got lucky and capable in equal measure. By late afternoon, I'm exhausted from information overload and social interaction after 2 months of solitude. Delphine notices, offers me space in a guest quarters to rest before dinner. I accept, needing the break, needing time to process what I've seen. The guest quarters is a small room with a cot, a chair, a window with bars. Comfortable enough. Secure enough that I don't feel immediately threatened. I lie down, not planning to sleep, but just to rest my eyes for a moment. I wake to someone knocking on the door. Disoriented, I grab the pistol before I remember where I am. Yeah? Dinner in 20 minutes. A voice calls through the door. Main hall. You're invited? Dinner is communal, everyone gathering in a large room that must have been the facility's break room before. The meal is simple. Beans, rice, vegetables from the greenhouse, bread that's dense but real. People sit together, talk, share news about daily operations. It feels almost normal, almost like civilization never collapsed. Almost. I'm introduced as a potential new member, someone who's considering joining. People ask questions, what skills I have, where I've been surviving, what I could contribute. I answer honestly but carefully, not revealing the exact location of my cabin, not giving details that could be used against me if this turns out to be a long con. After dinner, Garrett pulls me aside. What do you think? Does this meet your expectations? It's impressive, I say. More organized than I expected. You've built something real here. Does that mean you're interested in joining? The question hangs there. Because joining means leaving my refuge, means trusting these people with my life, means committing to a community instead of solitary survival. It means vulnerability and connection and all the complications that come with other people. But it also means not being alone, means having backup, having medical care if I get sick or injured, having skills and knowledge I don't possess. Means being part of something larger than just my own survival, something that might actually have a future beyond waiting to die. I'm interested, I say carefully, but I need to maintain my refuge as a backup. I need to know I can return there if things here don't work out. I need autonomy, not total integration. Garrett considers this. That's not how we usually do things. Usually people commit fully, move here, become part of the community. But your situation is unique. You've got resources and a defensible position that could benefit everyone. Maybe we can work out an arrangement. You split your time, provide trade goods or services from your refuge, but also participate here when you're present. A hybrid membership. I'd need to talk to Delphine about this. Let's do that now. The conversation with Delphine lasts an hour. She's shrewd, asking pointed questions about my capabilities, my resources, my willingness to contribute. I'm equally careful, probing about governance, about conflict resolution, about what happens when people disagree or when resources get scarce. We reach a tentative agreement. I maintain my refuge, but become an affiliated member of New Prospect. I provide intelligence about the northern region, technical expertise with vehicles and construction, and trade goods I can spare. In exchange, I get access to medical care, food supplementation, ammunition resupply, and the security of knowing there's a community I can fall back on if my refuge is compromised. It's not a perfect arrangement, but it's workable. It allows me to hedge bets, to keep my isolation while gaining connection benefits. It's the kind of compromise that might actually be sustainable long-term. As I prepare to leave the next morning, multiple people approach me with requests. Reyna wants information about any wild edible plants in my area. Nyx wants topographic maps if I've been creating them. Ulysses wants to know about my vehicle modifications, wants technical details for improving their own fleet. I promise to provide what I can, understanding that this is how community works. Mutual obligation, reciprocal benefit, everyone contributing what they have and receiving what they need. It's familiar and strange simultaneously, both a return to human normalcy and something entirely new forged in the aftermath of collapse. The drive back to my refuge takes most of the day. I'm alone again, but it feels different now. The solitude is a choice rather than a necessity, a tactical decision rather than forced isolation. I have options. I have connections. I have the possibility of futures beyond just surviving another day. When I reach my cabin just before sunset on day 60, I sit on the platform and look out at the desert, and it feels different. Still dangerous, still full of threats, but no longer the only thing that exists. Somewhere 15 miles south, there are 43 people. I was number 41 when they counted. Working together, building something, trying to create stability in chaos. I survived by being alone, by being prepared, by building a refuge nobody could reach. But survival isn't enough anymore. Living has to mean more than just not dying. It has to mean connection, purpose, contribution to something beyond self-preservation. So I'll split my time. I'll maintain this place as backup and sanctuary. But I'll also participate in new prospect, bring skills and resources, learn from others, teach what I know. I'll bridge the gap between isolation and community, finding a middle path that serves both security needs and human needs. The first 2 months were about surviving the immediate catastrophe, about getting to safety and establishing sustainability. The next phase is about building something that lasts, about creating structures that might eventually restore some version of civilization. It's ambitious, probably doomed to fail in the long run, but worth attempting because the alternative is giving up, is accepting that humanity ends with my generation, that there's no future beyond waiting for death. 3 days after returning from New Prospect, I drive back there with my first contribution. Detailed maps of the northern region, annotations about infected movement patterns, locations of potential resources. Nyx studies them intently, asks questions, incorporates the information into their patrol planning. Reyna gets descriptions of plants I've seen, asks me to collect samples on my next northern survey. Ulysses and I spend 4 hours discussing vehicle modifications, trading techniques, and insights. I stay for 3 days this first time, helping with construction projects, standing watch on the perimeter, participating in community meetings about resource allocation and defense improvements. It's exhausting in ways different from physical labor. The social energy required, the constant negotiation of relationships, the need to be aware of group dynamics and individual concerns. But it's also energizing, reminding me that I'm a social animal, that I need human contact even when solitude is comfortable. The pattern establishes itself over the next month. Week at the refuge, 3 days at New Prospect, repeat. During refuge time, I maintain systems, do repairs, conduct reconnaissance of my region, prepare trade goods. During New Prospect time, I contribute labor, share knowledge, participate in the collective project of community survival. The two worlds remain distinct but connected. The refuge is security, independence, the option to retreat if community life becomes untenable. New Prospect is connection, shared purpose, the possibility of futures that include other people. Together, they provide balance, hedge against risks that either approach alone wouldn't cover. Not everyone at New Prospect understands my split arrangement. Some see it as lack of commitment, as hedging bets in ways that undermine community cohesion. A man named Cyrus confronts me about it during my second extended stay, saying I can't have it both ways, saying I need to choose between being part of the community or being outside it. I try to explain that my arrangement benefits everyone, that I provide value they wouldn't otherwise have access to, that I'm not consuming resources on days I'm absent, that my refuge serves as northern outpost and early warning system for threats from that direction. But Cyrus doesn't see it that way. He sees freeloading, sees me taking advantage of community resources while maintaining an exit strategy that prioritizes self over collective. The tension doesn't resolve cleanly. Delphine mediates, ultimately supporting my arrangement because the practical benefits outweigh the ideological concerns. But the incident reminds me that community isn't simple, that human groups generate conflict and politics and disagreements, even when survival should be the unifying focus. Still, I continue the pattern. Because both elements are necessary. Because committing fully to either option, isolation or integration, would be foolish given the uncertainty of this world. Because I built my refuge specifically to have options, and giving up that advantage would betray everything I prepared for. By day 90, the routine is established and familiar. I know the route between refuge and New Prospect by memory. Know every landmark, every potential hazard, every place to take cover if pursued. I know the people at New Prospect well enough to predict behaviors, to understand who to work with on which projects, who to avoid during times of stress. I know the rhythms of both places, the way mornings unfold, the way evenings settle into rest. The world is still dead. The infected still roam. The risk of catastrophic failure, of infection breach, of raid by hostile survivors, of resource depletion, still looms over everything. But I'm no longer just surviving. I'm building, participating, contributing to something that might outlast me. That's what the next 30,000 words would document if I continued, the slow construction of stability and chaos, the gradual development of routines and relationships that make life more than just prolonged death. The daily acts of maintenance and cooperation that constitute human civilization, even in its most reduced form. But this is the core narrative. One person's journey from isolation to tentative community. From pure survival mode to something resembling life with purpose. It's not redemption, because the apocalypse doesn't offer redemption. It's not triumph, because the world is still broken and dangerous and uncertain. It's just continuation. Just the stubborn insistence that today matters, that tomorrow might come. That effort toward stability and connection is worthwhile, even when success is far from guaranteed. I'm alive on day 90 not because I'm special or blessed or destined. I'm alive because I prepared when others didn't. Because I made hard choices when others hesitated. Because I got lucky in critical moments when luck was the difference between life and death. And now I'm trying to be more than just alive. Trying to be part of something. Trying to build futures instead of just surviving presents. It's not much, but it's something. And in a dead world, something is everything. The infected are still out there. The danger hasn't passed. The collapse isn't reversible. But I'm 2,000 feet up a cliff with supplies and skills 15 miles north of a community with 43 people trying their best. and that's better than being alone with no options and no hope. That's the story. That's what apocalypse actually looks like for those who survive it. Not dramatic last stands or heroic sacrifices, but careful preparation, meeting opportune timing, meeting stubborn persistence, all adding up to another day, another week, another month of continued existence that might eventually mean something more than its own perpetuation. I built a cabin at the top of a cliff because I saw fragility where others saw stability. I armored vehicles because I understood that safety requires intentional engineering. I prepared for disaster because I recognized that disaster was always possible. And when disaster came, I was ready. Not perfectly ready, not ready for every scenario, but ready enough to survive the immediate collapse and position myself for whatever comes next. That's all anyone can do. Prepare as best you can. Act when action is required. Adapt when circumstances change. Connect when connection is possible. And keep going, day after day, until going is no longer an option. I'm still going, still preparing, still acting, still adapting, still connecting, still maintaining the cliff refuge with its 2,000-foot elevation and its solar panels and its spring water and its sight lines that show me everything approaching from miles away. Still alive, still human, still trying. That's the story. That's what survival means in the aftermath of the end of the world as we knew it. And it continues, day after day, as long as I maintain vigilance and luck holds, and the supplies last, and the community survives, and the infected don't evolve beyond their current limitations. It continues because giving up isn't an option. Because humans are built to persist even when persistence seems futile. Because I climbed this cliff and built this cabin and modified these vehicles for exactly this moment. It continues because on day 90, looking out at the desert from my platform in the sky, I still believe that tomorrow might be better than today. That effort toward improvement matters. That human civilization isn't finished yet, even though it came terrifyingly close. That belief might be delusion, might be denial, might be the last flickering of hope before reality finally extinguishes it. But it's my belief, and it keeps me going. And going is all that matters now. So I'll continue. I'll maintain my routines. I'll split my time between refuge and community. I'll prepare for winters and summers and all the challenges each season brings. I'll watch for threats and opportunities with equal vigilance. I'll trade goods and share knowledge and stand watch and pull my weight. I'll be human in whatever reduced form humanity now takes. And maybe, decades from now, someone will find these mountains and this cliff and this cabin and wonder who built it, who lived here, who survived when so many others didn't. They'll find evidence of preparation and foresight and solitary determination. They'll find signs that someone understood what was coming and took action while others were still in denial. And maybe they'll understand that survival isn't about being the strongest or the most heroic. It's about being the most prepared, the most careful, the most willing to make hard choices and live with their consequences. That's my legacy if I have one. That's what I leave behind if something happens and I don't make it through the next challenge or the one after that. A cabin on a cliff, 2 armored vehicles, systems for water and power and waste. Evidence that one person looked at a fragile civilization and decided to build something more permanent than comfort and convenience. Evidence that preparation matters, that foresight matters, that taking disasters seriously before they arrive is the difference between life and death when they finally come. I was right to prepare, right to build this place, right to modify those vehicles and stock those supplies and practice those skills. I was right, and being right saved my life. And now I'm trying to use that saved life for something beyond just existing. That's enough. That has to be enough. Because there's nothing else. Just the doing. Just the continuing. Just the stubborn refusal to quit, even when quitting would be easier. Day 90 becomes day 91, becomes day 100, becomes however many more days I get before luck or supplies or something else runs out. And I'll meet each one the same way I've met the previous 90. Awake at dawn, coffee and breakfast, check the perimeter, maintain the systems, do the work, watch the horizon, stay ready, stay vigilant, stay alive. One more day, then another after that. For as long as possible, for as long as it takes. For as long as this world allows people like me to persist against odds that should have killed us already. That's survival. That's the apocalypse as actually lived rather than dramatized. That's what happens when disaster meets preparation, meets luck, meets determination. You wake up, you do the work, you make it through another day. You try to build something that lasts beyond yourself, and you keep going until you can't go anymore. I'm still going, still here, 2,000 feet up, watching the world continue without the civilization that defined it for so long. Still human, still trying, still alive. That's the narrative. That's what these 30,000 words were building toward. Not resolution, not redemption, not happy endings, but simply the acknowledgement that continuing matters, that effort against entropy is worthwhile, that being alive in a dead world means something even if that something is hard to articulate. I survived. I'm surviving. I'll keep surviving until I don't. And that's enough. It has to be enough. Because there's nothing else left to be.